Hello, thank you for stopping by to check out this video today. It's been a while since I've been on here, but I had a request from somebody to do a video in regards to licensing as a plumber. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the different licenses you could get as a plumber and why I feel it's important that you get as many different licenses as you can in this field, because the more licenses you hold, the better job opportunities you have and the more money you will ultimately make in this field. And before I get too far into it, the first thing I want to say is that every state and country is completely different in the type of licensing they have and the way that you go about getting certain licenses. So ones that I might be mentioning here talking about, your state might not have, or the requirements might be different. So whatever you do, make sure you do some research. And you could do this simply by going on to Google and typing in like construction or builders board of your state. Typically it's going to be in the capital city of your state. Once you get a phone number or call somebody down there, they'll be able to get you the information that you need in regards to the requirements for any test or license that you're trying to get. And like I said at the beginning of the video, try to get as many licenses as you can. Now, depending on where you're working at, they might only have you doing some, specific kind of work that's not going to require all these different types of licenses I'm going to go over. But if you work somewhere that's going to pay for it, or is going to send you to school for this stuff, or you have your time in the field, please do what you can to get them. Like I said, it's going to make you more employable. It's going to open up way more job opportunities for you, and it's going to increase your year-over-year salary. So I've essentially broken this down into three separate categories, right? First, you have your regular plumbing license, which are like your Journeyman, your master plumbing license. The second category I have is your Contractor's license. And then for the third category is like all your specialty types of licensing. So I'm just going to dig into each one of these a little bit, just kind of give you a rough about idea of what's out there and what you might need to do in order to get these licenses. So if I backtrack to the regular plumbers, right, and this is going to be for new construction or even your service plumbers who are going into homes and fixing things, you have a Journeyman license and you have a master plumber's license. So in order to get the Journeyman license, like here, I'm in the state of Ohio. I have to have worked in the field for, I believe it's 4 or 5 years. You have to do a 4-year apprenticeship program, which is like going to a trade school. They keep track of all your on-the-job hours and your schooling, tests, all that kind of stuff. Once you complete that apprenticeship program, you can then take a test through the state to get your Journeyman license, right? So you pass that test, you get a Journeyman license. What this does is it makes you a more credible plumber, and also this will allow you to get on the upper end of your pay scale when you actually hold that license. And depending on the company that you work for or where you're trying to go or state, or if you're doing like government jobs, things like that, you might actually be required to hold this license given that you've had the appropriate amount of time in the field. Now, if you're new into this and you're just getting your foot started into the field, and you want to do like an apprenticeship program, or you do want to proceed and check out this license, talk to your employer, see if they'll send you to school. Typically, most people will. Like, your employer will pay for you to go to school, because if you get this license and you're working under them, that's going to help them get additional jobs. And like I said, it's going to make everybody more credible in that situation. The other one I had mentioned was the master plumber license. So after you get your Journeyman license, you have to have so many more hours of on-the-job training, or at least in the field. Out here in Ohio, I believe it's an additional 10,000 hours on the job. So then you would go down to the state, you send them an application, show them your credentials, all that stuff, yada yada. Then you test, you pass, and you get that master plumber's license. And really, that's just a step up from the Journeyman's. Once again, gives you credibility, gives you a little more power on the pay scale, makes it easier to go do different jobs, things like that, like work for different companies or union type stuff. It's really a credible license to have. Now, what I will say in regards to these two licenses, if you're somebody who's interested in the plumbing field, but you know that you eventually want to own your own business, I I wouldn't advise you on really pursuing these two licenses. And that's where we're going to get into the next category of the contractor's license. So this is going to be like a state plumbing contractor's license. And what this actually allows you to do is like run and operate a plumbing business in a legal manner to where you can pull permits, you can submit things to the city for jobs, like if you're doing bathroom renovations, water heater installs, sewer builds, things like that. You're going to need to, your company is going to have to be licensed, and somebody is going to have to take that test and be licensed at the company. Typically, it's going to be the owner or a partner of the business. So like I said, if you're looking for ownership, pay more attention to the plumbing contractor's license. Like I said, every state is different, but here in the state of Ohio, the only requirements I really need for this is you have to have 5 years of consecutive work history. Like, I can work at different companies and show it on a W-2, not a 1099, but a W-2. And I have to have, so 5 years consistent work. There can't be a lapse of more than like a month to 3 months in there. Also, the companies I've worked for, they would have had to have pulled permits for jobs that I've worked on. I would have to show one for each year. I'd have to pass a background check. And there was one other small item in there. Oh, it was just like a fee or something like that you have to pay for the application. It's actually pretty easy. They don't look at apprenticeships or like on-the-job training or anything like that. It's just a matter of how many years you've had in the field. So once you have the credentials for the application, obviously you would fill that out, the state accept it, you would go and then take a test. Here in Ohio, apparently it's like an 8-hour test. I'm in the process actually of getting ready to set up for my application and take a class. It's like a 10-week course to prep me for that test. So that once you take that test and you pass, you'll get your plumbing license essentially, and then you can run and operate a company without this license, but you're never going to be able to pull permits without this license. So this will allow you to do that. So like I said, business ownership, that's the route you want to go. Go after this plumbing contractor license. And the other thing too is once you hold this license, you don't have to take a test again. You just have to get continuing education hours every year. Like Ohio, I believe you're required to get, it's like 10 or 12 hours, something like that every year. And that's just how you keep your license. And I believe there's a fee associated with that. So this then brings me into the last category, which is specialty licenses. And these are licensed that as either an owner, like if you have a plumbing license or if you're going for that, or even if you're like a journeyman or a master plumber, these are all additional licenses that you get that not only are going to help you on the pay scale side, they're going to make getting different jobs easier, it's going to make you more employable, or if you're on the business end, this is just going to help you get additional jobs, and which then in return means more money, or at least additional revenue. So what I'm going to do here is I've just got some different ones. I'm just going to ramble off. I'm not going to get into them too much. Like I said before, even in the video, every state is different. So most of these, my state has this, like these would be separate licenses I can get, one of which I actually hold, which is the Backflow license. But your state might be different because like out here in Ohio, we do things differently than people in California or like Texas. So you might have completely different licenses out there that you can get that might not be available to me. So you have mains and pumps, which is like dealing with the big water line services, whether it's in the street or like coming into a building. You would need to be licensed to deal with stuff like that. Also like sprinkler license. So, and I mean more like the fire sprinklers that you're going to see in like a commercial building, or you're even starting to see them in homes a lot now, like a lot of newer built homes, especially out in the West Coast. Sprinkler systems are becoming very common. Backflow license, which I mentioned earlier, this is one that I hold. This allows me to test certain devices through the water department to make sure that they're safe. I had to have 3 years experience. I took a class and passed the test. Obviously, got the license, and I just have to get CUs every couple years for it. And I believe I have to take a test as well too. It's like every 2 or 3 years. Yada yada. Next is gas lines, or like even like med gas, or the gas lines that are out in the street that supply your house, like I said, med gas or oxygen, which are going to be like in hospitals or certain factories, things like that. Those people definitely have to have a license when you're dealing with that type of stuff. Hydronics, which is dealing with boilers or heating systems where you're heating up water to heat a facility or whatever you're doing with it. You might have to have a license for that type of work. Wells and septic systems. So this is going to be for the rural areas. If you have a well that you're getting your water for your house for, you might need to be licensed to work on those. Like I said, septic systems. This is once again a rural thing. If you're out in the country, you don't have like city sewers or anything like that, you are going to need to be licensed to install and work on those type of systems. And this is where like you flush your toilet, run your sink. This is where this water goes into a holding tank, then either goes to a leach field or some sort of aeration system from there. And then the last one I really have on here is a sewer builder's license, which that's more for like people who are doing waterproofing or exterior sewers of houses or buildings, where like, you know, this is very common for drain cleaning companies to have. They're going to have like a sewer builder's license so they can repair and replace those type of sewer systems. And that's where either like downspouts for rain, you have water going through a storm sewer, and when you flush your toilet, run a sink, that's going through a sanitary sewer. So you're going to have to be licensed to work on those things as well too. And a lot of these just require on the job hours, like you're going to have so many years in the field. Typically you're going to have to do a class before you take a test, and then obviously once you pass, you're going to hold a license, and you're going to have to do some sort of CEUs, or you're going to have to pay a fee every year. You might have to take a test every year, every couple years. It's up to you to look into it to see what your state requires. So just to do a quick recap, like I said, if you're somebody who's going to be working for somebody, you're fine doing that, or you want to go with a union job, try to get like a journeyman and then the master license, which you're going to have to do an apprenticeship program, which is where you're going to school for a couple years and passing that and getting your license from there. If you're looking at ownership, go the plumbing license, the plumbing contractor's license route, which is where you don't need to do the schooling. Typically not, at least in the state of Ohio, you don't have to. Pursue that license that way. It's a little bit easier, do a lot more for you. And then, like I rambled off with all the specialty licensing, try and get as many of those as you can. And if you work for a company that specializes in certain things, get that license. And even if they don't do something that maybe you want to get into, like let's say if your company doesn't deal with fire sprinklers or dealing with main water services in the buildings, convince your boss to let you, take a class and learn that. And the way you spin it off to them is, if you hold that license, that company can then do that work, which is then going to bring more revenue in. And if I'm not mistaken too, any of those specialty licenses that you personally hold, say if you're like a journeyman or a master and you hold those licenses and you want to switch over to ownership and get the plumbing contractor's license, you will still hold those other licenses because they're all under your name. So, like I say, if you're looking at ownership, try and get as many licenses as you can on top of that plumbing contractor's license. So, I appreciate you stopping by and watching the video today. If you have any questions or other suggestions, or you'd like to see additional content or certain things you want me to talk about, please let me know. I do respond to the comments as much as I can. I'd love to hear from you. Once again, thanks for watching the video. Have a great day.